Welcome back to Sahara TV. My name is Rudolf Okonkwo. A week ago, Nigerians went to the polls, and we know the result today. We have a president-elect in the person of Muhammadu Buhari, a former general. Now, a lot of people have been talking about the election, the implications, and who won, who lost, who is up, who is down, who is taking this position. And I have a panel here, the best on TV, Sahara panel here to discuss the implications of the election, all the angles. My immediate left is Kwesi Baako. Pardon me. Welcome to Sahara TV.
Thank you very much. I can't believe you are so fluffy.
No. You see, I'm so excited about what we're going to talk about now. And at the other end is our own Declan, the editorial chief. Welcome to Sahara TV.
Thank you, Rudolf.
All right. So let me start. 1 week after, what are people talking about, Kwesi? What are you thinking about? What happened?
I think a lot of people are just waiting for General Buhari to be sworn in. But there are also, bits and pieces of activity happening all over. There was a bomb blast on a pipeline after the Ijaw youth withdrew their promise not to cause mayhem and stuff like that. But I think generally Nigerians are just waiting with bated breath for General Buhari to be sworn in so they officially have him as president of the Republic of Nigeria.
Okay. Declan, what are you hearing? What's going on?
So the sense that we've been getting on the editorial side is the real story has been how surprised people have been in terms of the smoothness of what there seems to be in terms of the transition. So I think there were a lot of expectations that there was going to be more violence, and of course we do have areas of violence throughout the country, but I think that people really thought that whether it was going to be the North that was going to be having systemic violence if Jonathan won, or the South if Buhari won. And of course there has been violence, but I think that people were expecting more of that. I think that it's positive that there hasn't been as significant as anticipated, as well as internationally a lot of diplomats have been saying that Jonathan should be commended as a statesman, and so this is something that we've been hearing a lot about, but we haven't been hearing kind of enough viewpoints where people are saying actually he did a variety of horrible things during the election, including trying to rig a number of different states in the South, yet why would we give him this accolade?
I want us to talk about that because it's a big issue. Obieza Kwesi wrote a tweet, I believe, where she said that Jonathan is not a hero. Do you think we are blowing this out of proportion in terms of the fact that he called, whether he was compelled to do that or not, but he called Buhari to concede? Does that make him a hero?
Look, Rudolf, I said on this platform, I said I'm sitting right where I'm sitting right now, and I'm going to repeat what I said before. Any African government, any African leader who peacefully hands over power, an incumbent president who hands over power, especially before the vote was actually called, deserves some commendation. I think
No, we're not questioning commendation, but does that make him a hero? Does that whitewash all the things he did while he was in power? I mean, is that the standard now?
Definitely not. Most definitely not. But the point is this. He could have sent Nigeria in a certain direction. People say, oh, he had no choice. I think he had a choice.
So what was the choice? What was the option?
Well,
what army would he have used to put Nigeria in?
Don't let's even call it a choice. Don't let's even call it a choice. Let's call it a bad decision, for want of a better word. But he could have taken a decision that would have taken Nigeria in a different direction that nobody wants. I'll give you an example, even though this example did not wreak anything negative. In Ghana, just 2 or 3 doors away, Nana Akufo-Addo lost the election to President Mahama. He said, no, I didn't lose. He took the issue to court. 6 months or so, the issue was still in court. Ghana was President Mahama was ruling virtually half of Ghana because the other half of Ghana refused blatantly to accept him as president. Imagine this scenario in Nigeria. Imagine President Jonathan had said, oh, you know what, I don't trust INEC. So let's even forget about army and violence and all this. And let's just say he says, I'm going to court. and I'm not going to accept the result.
But
What would that
still
have?
handed over on the 29th?
Yes,
Okay.
I agree. But take also into consideration even the Ijaw youth, for instance, and their unflinching support for Jonathan. Take into consideration all the other little, pockets of, the flashpoints, all these other potential, situations waiting to erupt. I think that, yes, blame him for all the stuff that he's done. Blame him for the alleged corruption. Blame him for all the slackness with the Chibok situation and all of that. But also give him his due.
All right. So
I think in kind of in response to that question, how much do we celebrate somebody's behavior if they're supposed to do something, right? So if you're supposed to do something, which is in this case admit to defeat and then manage a peaceful transition, should we really be celebrating what he ought to be doing anyway? I mean, I think that's a question. Kwesi's point, which I think is valid, and I wouldn't want to remove from the conversation, is, well, the tendency in Africa has been transitions are usually marked by a great deal of uncertainty, and because of that, we have concerns of coups, we have concerns of transitional governments, all sorts of the means and events like that, and so if Jonathan wanted to make this transition, and if PDP wanted to make this transition marred by conflict and a great deal of uncertainty they could have, it doesn't, at least at this point, seem that that's the route that they've chosen to take. I think it's a question for the Nigerian public, though, to decide whether that's something to celebrate or not.
all right, let's go to why did he lose? Why did Jonathan lose? Because we are now looking back and people are wondering, why do you think he lost? What are the main points that didn't play in his favor?
Rudolf, I was speaking with Dr. Amadou Ali, who is the Director General of the presidential campaign, and he did mention that it's a combination of INEC's connivance / ineptitude
Of
INEC
okay,
and their own internal, mistakes, things that he thinks that PDP could have done better.
did he mention the mistakes? What they were?
He didn't go into those details, but he did say that they've identified some internal, stuff that they could have done better, at home. But he still thinks that INEC had some underhand dealings going.
Okay.
But looking beyond what he said, though, I think there are certain factors that came together to work against President Jonathan. These are a few of them. The Boko Haram menace definitely played a part in all of this. His response to the whole thing made it look like anybody but Jonathan is okay, because anybody would do better at trying to rescue the girls, at trying to fight Boko Haram, at trying to keep them at bay. So that definitely, to me, had something to do with his losing the election. All the talk of corruption that his tenure was embattled with also had something to play. Something to contribute to that. We heard of numerous allegations of corruption, including the all infamous, is it $147 million, something like that? That was billion. I'm sorry.
Yeah. In Nigeria,
Okay.
we don't talk millions.
I know.
Don't insult us.
I'm Ghanaian. Now
Yeah,
excuse
don't
me.
insult us. If million is missing, that's chicken
I
change.
guess.
Go ahead.
But anyway, so that in particular sent very wrong signals. And then the president's reaction to these things, even if the president himself was not caught with his hand in the kitty, he has to be seen clamping down on these things. But if the president comes back and actually seems to be defending the people who are being, who these things have been alleged against, then it's beginning to not look that great. Obanikoro, is that what his name is?
Yes.
And how he just made him a minister at the last minute. People were like, whoa, what's going on? I think these things worked against him, seriously. The other thing that I also think worked against him is that there's some kind of incumbency fatigue in Nigeria. 16 years of the PDP. People want change. I mean, it's only natural that people would want to try something else, especially against the backdrop of all the other factors that we've mentioned. and then also the slump in the economy. Even though Nigeria is claiming to have overtaken South Africa as the biggest economy, most people say it did not trickle down to the average man, and that, I think, also contributed.
Now, for some analysts, they talk about the role of the Americans and the British in the failure of Jonathan to secure a second term. They think that the Americans and the British wrote him off long ago, and they worked against him. What do you think?
I mean, I don't think that it's fair to characterize the British and American position as working against Jonathan. I do think that through a variety of monitoring groups, which were funded by the U.S. government, were put in place in Nigeria to try and make sure that the election and the democratic process was as strong as possible. I think that was kind of what at least from the U.S. perspective, what the main policy or stance was. If that means for some people that meant that they were willing to have Jonathan cast away and discarded in place of somebody else, I think that that argument could be made. But I think that the U.S.'s stance was really to encourage and strengthen democratic processes. I do think that the U.S. Is happy with this change in leadership to Buhari. I think that the U.S. Was not happy with Jonathan's overall performance, specifically with fighting terrorism and allowing this Boko Haram situation to evolve and become far more deadly than was necessary.
Now, let me come back to you, because people who say that, they all refer to things like the anti-gay bill that was passed and signed by Jonathan. They think that was the first point where he became more quote-unquote enemy of the United States and the West. And then the other thing they make mention of is the Boko Haram situation where he fell out with the Americans. And then and then the fact that they changed the date of the election, even though John Kerry came in and said, don't do this, we don't like this, let it go. And they moved it, so that was when they wrote him off. So
if we take those three examples, John Kerry defying what John Kerry had wanted, the lackluster response to Boko Haram, and then the anti-gay bill, which was signed. I think that right there shows how the U.S. has far less power in terms of dictating Nigerian affairs than a lot of Nigerian commentators and analysts would suggest. So I think that it's a lot of noise saying, well, the U.S. was working against Jonathan. Those three examples are perfect examples of how little the U.S. can do in terms of dictating how Nigeria carries its affairs.
Now, let me come back to you, Kwesi. There were a lot of pastors who said that this person will win, and they ended up not being right. But I want to talk about the losers and winners in this election. There are people like we saw Fani Kayode, Doyin Okube, all come out to say, that this is the will of the people. These were people who were very critical of Buhari when he was running, including people who said this will never happen, Buhari will never be the president of this country. All of a sudden, they are changing what is the cause of that, changing their tone? What is going on?
Name of the game, Rudolf. People who doesn't love a winner. But unfortunately, in politics, it gives you a bad shade because it makes it look like you don't have conscience. You just basically flow with the tide. But I'm not altogether surprised, because carpet crossing is something that happens all the time. It just happens to have happened too drastically in this situation. But also, we also know that there were a lot of people who crossed over from the PDP to the APC way before the elections actually happened. And whatever the factors were that, necessitated that exodus would even be more enhanced after a Buhari victory, because now they have a reason to move. Basically, I think politicians just love to win. And it's only too natural that they would want to align with the winning side.
Okay. Yesterday, Declan, the governor of Rivers State, Rotimi Amaechi, made a speech to the state where he said he should be forgiven for anything that he did that wasn't right. And basically, his tone was that of reconciliation. Remember, he was on our show and he was saying that they should cancel the elections in Rivers State. He's no longer talking about canceling the election. What happened?
I mean, so that's a great question to put to him. if I think that the less election drama he gets pulled into, the easier it will be for him to help manage this transition, and it's no state secret that it's very likely that Amici will ascend to a very powerful position within the Buhari administration. So I think that he's looking forward to the inauguration and then beyond.
Yeah, okay. Kwesi, now we had the first set of interviews that Buhari granted the international media, BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, after the election. And in each of them, he tried to play down the expectations, even saying that something like he wouldn't be able to deal with Boko Haram if it took them too long to do that. Something dramatically different from what he was saying during the campaign. What is responsible for that? He hasn't even got into power to see maybe there's no money or there's no army or there's no equipment. Why is he playing down expectations immediately after?
Reality check, Rudolf. Basic reality check. Because it's a different song you sing when you're outside and it's a different song you sing when you're inside.
But he's not in yet.
Yes, but he knows he's on the threshold. Yeah. He's on the doorstep. He's definitely going to go in. So it's actually good. It's actually a very good strategy to start preparing people's minds that, listen, I don't have a magic wand. I'm not going to perform magic. It actually takes you, the Nigerian people, to come up with the solutions to all the problems that we have. I am only going to be a steering, head. I'm going to be the pilot, but you also need to come along with me and help me to do what I have to do. It's very instructive, though, that his tone has changed remarkably, and I noticed that as well in his interview with Peter Okonkwo, of BBC, and he said something to the effect that if it took the Jonathan government 6 years to deal with Boko Haram and they couldn't do it, how is he supposed to, do it in 6 months or whatever? The thing, though, is, Mr. President, this is the promise you made to us, so Nigerians would not expect anything less. However, I also think that it's better for him to play down expectations and overachieve rather than make lofty promises and underachieve, as probably is the case with President Jonathan. Most people were expecting a lot of him, from him, probably because he said he was going to do all these things that they are asking him to do, and he's found not, doing it. Now, Buhari says, I'm not going to wave a magic wand, but I'm going to do it. So now people don't give him like timelines and stuff like that. And then he comes up and pulls something, he's going to look larger in the eyes of the people. And I think it's a great strategy that he's adopting in that sense.
We're not going to forget that he said he will make one naira to be equivalent to $1, and that he will feed all the kids in schools. A lot of people believe that. Do you think that's possible, considering
I don't, and I kind of want to support some of the things that Kwesi just said. You find that with politicians that as you move into their inauguration, once they've won, they begin to modify expectations, right? So during the campaign, they're going to tell you whatever you want to hear as long as they can get elected. But now they need to rein it in and say, okay, actually, the challenges are great, and we've got the fortitude to go beyond these challenges. But they're going to be far more reserved in their rhetoric than previous to that. I think that it would take significant economic planning and management reform in order to have the naira at the same value as the dollar. I mean, very few currencies in the world kind of possess that anyway, and there's a great deal of uncertainty and stability within Nigeria's economy. It's still very much over-reliant on a commodity, and the commodity is currently dropping in price, being oil. So I don't think that it's going to be happening overnight. And I think that the kind of people who Buhari decides to appoint into leadership positions will be the first indicator to see how serious he is about addressing these challenges.
Yep. If I can quickly chip in on that too. I totally agree with Declan on that point. However, as far as feeding kids in school goes, I think that is very doable. And I think he probably has a template for how to do that. It's pretty basic, if you ask me. If you can get a group of farmers and pay them well to grow food for schools, even like decentralize that, do it per unit I don't know what they call them in Nigeria, districts or whatever, and you get the farmers in that area to grow food to feed the children. Number one, you're providing jobs for these farmers. You're buying the commodities that they would otherwise be struggling to sell. And then you also be providing food for the kids, which foodstuffs in Africa, you and I know, really does not cost that much. It's not difficult to do at all. Feeding kids, I think it's something that he can definitely do.
Is it an Nkrumah strategy?
It's actually a CPP strategy. It is. In Ghana, it is. And you'll be interested to know that Ghana has a policy like that. School kids actually have free meals, even though...
Oh, they do?
They do, yes. Even though there are a lot of complaints about how the system is being run and stuff like that. But there's actually a system in place where local farmers are made to grow food, and then they buy the food of these farmers and use it to feed.
Now, let me say that if they can do that, a lot of kids will stay in school just for the
Totally,
food.
that's the idea. that actually is the idea, because in Ghana, they also gave them free school uniforms. Okay. So some of the kids will, like you said, just go to school for lunch, and that keeps them in school. So it's actually a great idea.
I also want to chime in, since we're talking about kind of policy making. It will be interesting to see how Buhari is as an administrator and as a chief executive. There's been a lot of analysis and commentary that Buhari is not a micromanager. He's kind of a hands-off leader, and that's interesting if that does show to be true, because I would also argue that Jonathan was also a hands-off leader. He wouldn't really get involved in a lot of, particularly with the military fighting Boko Haram. He was very distant and kind of disconnected from a lot of what was going on. There's a number of columnists writing over the past couple of weeks that's kind of how Buhari's leadership style is as well. And it will be interesting to see if that pans out to be true.
All right, let's move a little bit further to what will happen next Saturday, which is election for governors and people that will be members of the state House of Assemblies across Nigeria. I know that there are states that are considered the battleground state for the two parties. Well, how do you think that this election of last week will have impact on this coming election? Will people be interested to go and vote the way they were during the presidential election?
Again, I'm going to refer to an interview that we conducted, which I'm sure will play shortly, with the APC campaign director.
No, the secretary, the director of media.
Media and publicity, Garba Shehu, who said something like, Nigerians are copycats. Those were his words. And what he means by that is that Nigerians like to flow with the tide. Nigerians like to go with the winning side. So now that the APC is in power, a lot of people who were originally going to vote for the PDP would probably switch and vote for APC just to be on the winning side. That, I think, is a factor, really. Again, if the figures that we got from INEC are anything to go by, and I believe they are, it presupposes that the APC still has an advantage over the PDP. Again, the governorship or the gubernatorial elections is more, local. But you also want to look at how much effort President Jonathan actually put in and still lost. How much more are these governors going to put in on the track record of their party, which has just lost an election, and on the track record of a president that Nigeria has decided they no longer have any confidence in, to win their own seats? However, we all know, you and I know, that other factors play into the whole picture. So anything is possible, but I still think that the APC has an edge over the PDP.
So what do you think? Especially, I want you to look at the structure in Nigeria where if you're not with the government in power, you are at a disadvantaged position, and most people will want to be associated with the government in power. What do you think is going to happen on Saturday?
I think a lot of it remains to be seen. I think that you can find a lot of people wanting to coalesce around the guy who they think is going to win in last minute. Similar, though maybe somewhat different, to the political defections that we saw leading up to the presidential campaigns last year. I think, though, that the enthusiasm for local races will not match that which you saw for the presidential races, and I think that that's an important dynamic to also be looking at, to see which states are going to have higher voter turnout and what the causes of that would be. Are they being motivated by local issues, or are those competitive races more in line with national political dynamics?
Now, just before I come back to you, the campaigns, all these campaigns, they have PR people from America, but the Buhari, and we have not examined the role they played in how things happened. What do you know about the people behind Buhari campaign and the Jonathan campaign? And like, for instance, I would want to think that they have a role in having Jonathan concede defeat. You think?
That's a really great question, and I don't know what role they had in convincing him to concede, if they did at all, and when that took place. For all we know, he came to that decision on his own. But safe to say, these PR groups are, I mean, they're very powerful. They're also very well compensated. Their retainers are, depending on the group, $100,000 a month. And I know the PR campaign behind Buhari's presidential organization is led by former chief advisor to Barack Obama, David Axelrod. So they have proven to be very significant in terms of packaging the message, branding, and they seem to have gathered a good sense in terms of how the national psyche in Nigeria operates, and they played to that, I think, in a successful way. Arguably, the Buhari campaign's PR team was probably more successful, considering their victory.
Okay, we are running out of time. Let me ask you, Kwesi, how in Ghana, how did the Ghanaian media and the people in Ghana react to what happened in Nigeria? You have an election coming up soon, too.
Yes, indeed. And the Ghanaians were closely monitoring the Nigerian elections for obvious reasons. We call ourselves, in case you don't know, I'm telling you, but we call ourselves first cousins. Ghanaians and Nigerians consider themselves first cousins. But beside that, just the proximity of the two countries makes it almost imperative for you to be concerned about whatever happens in these areas. So yeah, the media was definitely monitoring the elections. I think that the Ghanaian media kind of feels happy that Buhari won. The headlines were all like very, upbeat about the fact that there's a new president in Nigeria. Beyond that, though, the press also reported a lot on the resilience of the Nigerian people, how they beat the odds to go and vote and choose a new leader. Now, there's a very interesting, scenario going on with comparing Ghana and Nigeria. The ruling party in Ghana, the NDC, has the umbrella as its symbol. The outgoing or the currently ruling PDP has the umbrella as its symbol. These two parties have the same colors. They use the same colors. President Jonathan is 58 years old. President Mahama is going to be 58 years old when he goes into the election next year. General Buhari is 72 years old. The opposition candidate is 72 years old when he goes into the election next year.
Wow.
Mahama and Goodluck Jonathan are really close friends. Kufuor
is Mahama's hometown Tuoke too?
Interesting. Anyway, but all these things come together, and it's giving the opposition some kind of hope that there's some kind of divine connection over there, and then come next year, the opposition is going to unseat President Mahama, not my words, the words of the opposition. So kind of that. But the Ghanaian press generally is very excited about the fact that Nigerians were able to conduct an election free of all the violence that most people were expecting to happen.
All right. So as we move towards May 29th, what are your expectations from the Buhari group? Do you expect them to? I
think my biggest expectation is that they really begin to define who are going to be the leaders within Buhari's administration and cabinet. I think there are some questions, but I think there are also a lot of obvious go-to individuals, with Governor Michi being one of them. I think that it's pretty obvious he'll ascend to a pretty important position. I would assume he would hope so as well, since he defected and risked a great deal to help secure the victory. So I think that's the thing that I'm going to be watching the most for, as well as signs for how Buhari will lead his new administration. Not just the people he appoints, but the kinds of things he says leading up to it.
All right, we have to end it here. Kwesi, thank you so much for coming.
Rudolf.
And Declan, thank you so much. When we come back, we are going to show you an interview we have with the PDP director of Jonathan's campaign. And we have another panel coming up of experts who will talk about the upcoming election for governorship election in Nigeria. So stay tuned.